Well, hello again, VC. It is time to ring in the new year by playing the game of Vinyl Tag. And the first of the 20 questions this year is Best Find of 2018. And for me, that would be this one, Wolfgang Dauner Output. I'm getting a lot of glare on that, sorry. It's a very glossy laminated cover. This is one of the earliest releases on the ECM label and one that I had a hard time tracking down, so this was probably my best grail of the year. The second question is a shout out to other VC channels who don't have enough subscribers. And I've noticed several people have mentioned the person that I want to mention first, and that would be Rob at Sounds Strange. He's a man of very keen intelligence and a discriminating listener. He won't just put up records and say, here's a record, it's great, here's another record, it's great. He will really articulate what he likes or does not like, and gives a lot of background. He's got a strong emphasis on classical music, and is just a really interesting channel that I recommend very highly. Another one is Roger Coleman. Roger with a D. Coleman is really excellent channel. He has tastes that are pretty similar to mine, shows a lot of avant-garde music, a lot of spiritual jazz, and very interesting again and insightful look at the records that he shows. There's so many others, a lot of the people that are well known, but I can't mention everybody. Got to give a shout out to Steve Carlson, to the Vinyl Verse, so many others. So thank you all. Third question is, what holes are you looking to fill in your collection? And I might say that I'm looking to replace some of the holes that I've already filled with reissue copies of albums with originals. Some of my very favorites on the ECM label, which I collect, are the current reissues, like Ralph Towner's Solstice and John Abercrombie's Timeless. I really ought to get original copies of those. I was also noticing that my Beatles collection is really pretty patchy, and I wasn't even sure that I didn't have Revolver on vinyl. Now, I could go to any shop and pick up Revolver at any time, but I want my old copy back. I want that one I had from 1970 with the green capital label. That would be really cool to find. Next question, a cheap album that is really good. This, in fact, is one that I picked up myself in a dollar bin quite recently. Switched on Bach by Walter Carlos, and you see this in bargain bins. You'll see a lot of the Walter Wendy Carlos albums in the budget bins, and that's kind of funny because there has been no vinyl reissue of these, and the CDs are long out of print. Wendy Carlos does own the rights to her own recordings, and they've been out of print for a while, but it's still quite easy to find many of them, particularly the earliest ones, in the dollar bins. Question 5 is a favorite side project album. I'm not sure if a side project or if a solo album counts as a side project, but I'm going to show the first solo album by Adrian Belew, which came out right around the same time of his second album as a member of King Crimson. He started his solo career with this album, The Lone Rhino, and you can see that he has personalized this one. Sixth question, a song from an artist that is uncharacteristic in their catalog. Well, Steel Eye Span, of course, is best known for their adaptations of British folk music, but in 1971, they recorded Buddy Holly's Rave On as an a cappella piece. There are two versions of it. One is done fairly straight. The other version has the vocal interpretation or vocal imitation of a record skipping in the middle of it. Last album you purchased. I have the first two albums that I received in 2019 would be Phil Och's first album, All the News That's Fit to Sing. This was an album that finds him very much under the spell of Bob Dylan. It includes a couple of talking blues songs that are exactly in the same format that Bob Dylan did on his various talking blues recordings. And Phil Och's voice was maybe not quite as sweet as it became later, a little more strident, very much a protest singer at this time. So a little less poetry, and he never stopped being a protest singer, but it was more overt at this time. Second, Pictures at an Exhibition by Tomita. This was Tomita's second classical adaptation album after the Debussy Snowflakes Are Dancing album. This is his synthesizer version of Pictures at an Exhibition by Mussorgsky. It was a few years after Emerson, Lake and Palmer did their interpretation. Of course, they did only extracts from it. Tomita does the full thing and unleashes such a bizarre imagination. In particular, the section, The Ballet of the Chicks in Their Shells, which features synthesizer imitations of the sound of tweeting birds, clucking chickens, and yowling cats, all forming the ballet, giving a whole new interpretation to that. Next question. A great album with a bad cover. Boy, there are a lot of choices for that, but I've selected Acquiring the Taste by Gentle Giant. Not in the greatest taste. But a terrific LP. And conversely, a bad album with a great cover. Now, this is much harder because I don't have much that I would consider bad albums. If I have a bad album, I've usually gotten rid of it. I would say this, though, is distinctly the least good album by Jethro Tull, but I love the cover design. Now, this is tasteful. Ian Anderson actually said he doesn't like this cover because it's too much black, and if somebody brings it to him for an autograph, there's no place to put a black Sharpie signature on it. A blues album. I don't have a lot of blues on vinyl anymore. It's mostly turned into various CD box sets. But my favorite blues man, probably, well, for electric blues, I would say Howlin' Wolf. But for acoustic blues, which I'm more deeply into, it would be Skip James. Skip James had the most unearthly beautiful voice. And this is the second of the two albums he made for Vanguard late in his life after he was rediscovered. He'd started his musical career in the 30s and basically withdrew from the public after that, so he wasn't known again until the 60s when he was rediscovered by John Fahey and Henry Vestine and brought back to perform on the festival circuit. So this album and the other album that he made for Vanguard today are just absolutely killer, absolutely classics of the Delta Blues. An earworm song. There was actually a cartoon in the Sunday Comics today about earworms. It was Hilary Price's Rhymes with Orange comic, which showed an ear doctor examining a patient and saying, "You have an earworm, but as long as you know how to love, I know you will survive." Christmas music is always earworms, so this is one, of course, I just showed in the Christmas period, but the parade of the wooden soldiers from this is one that got stuck in my head for a little while, and I was playing it on the saxophone myself that day, so that's that. A historically important artist. I chose Leonard Bernstein. Definitely somebody important in the history of music as not only a great conductor, as a great composer, as a composer who worked both in the specifically classical world and in the Broadway milieu. A pianist in this case, where he is accompanying Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau in a program of Mahler's songs, and as an educator, one who popularized classical music with his lecture series. And you can find a lot of great oratory, great teaching by Leonard Bernstein on YouTube if you go looking around for those lectures. The next question is an album you own because of your parents. Well, when I was a kid, my parents listened mostly to Broadway show music, so I grew up hearing a lot of things like Camelot, South Pacific, My Fair Lady. My favorite of those was a not quite so well-known show called Wildcat, which was a vehicle for Lucille Ball right after I Love Lucy ended. And of course, as a kid, I didn't really distinguish between Lucille Ball and Lucy on TV, so I always pictured it as the same character. But the other album that I really, really loved that my parents listened to a lot, I don't have it currently on vinyl, but it is Harry Belafonte at Carnegie Hall. Real classic album. It's got Deo, it's got some hilarious calypso pieces. He also goes through various other parts of the world to sing music associated with different countries and different ethnicities. There's a Hava Nagila, there's Danny Boy, there's Kukuruku Paloma, Shenandoah for American folk, Cotton Fields and John Henry. Great album, and one that I've always remembered well and cherished. The next question is best dollar bin find. Well, I already showed the Switched on Bach album that I found very recently in a dollar bin, so I'm going to go back to the 70s in an album that I originally found in a bargain bin. Would have been not even a dollar bin, a 50-cent bin or 25-cent bin. Phaedra by Tangerine Dream. This is not the actual copy. This is a recent reissue copy, but this is one of my all-time favorite albums by Tangerine Dream. Just a wonderful, very spacey album. Makes great use of both the synthesizers and the mellotron. Very much puts the dream in Tangerine Dream. Love the artwork too. Very appropriately abstract, refined, simple, and spacey. Okay, next question is favorite double album. Boy, there are a lot of choices that I could make. I'm not one of those people who hears a double LP and says, well, boy, this really could have been trimmed down to a really solid single album. I tend to think that I want to hear everything that's on that album, if it's the Beatles' White Album or The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway or Electric Ladyland or any of those great albums. Now, I also tend to be a big fan of the prog rock albums that divide the fans, the love 'em or hate 'em albums. I already did a whole video about King Crimson's Lizard, which is one of those. I just showed my least favorite Jethro Tull album. My favorite is A Passion Play. That's in that category. And this album is in that category. Tales from Topographic Oceans by Yes. I think this one is just magic. Classic Roger Dean cover. An album that came the same year they had just released a big live album, the big triple LP Yes Songs album. So I wasn't expecting anything from them. And one night I just happened to tune into a radio station that was premiering this album before it was released. And I heard some new Yes music. I thought, oh, great, new Yes. And I listened to it, and it went on and on and on. So that's my favorite double. An album you learned of from the VC. I'm going to show All the Way by Diamanda Galas. I believe it was Roger Coleman who showed this and got me to purchase a copy for myself. And my personal claim to fame is that I once stood next to Diamanda Galas in the audience at a Lena Lovitch concert. Show a 10-inch record. I chose Virginia Astley, Abau Aku. I'm not sure if that's how to pronounce that or what that means, but this is an EP released in 1982, and Virginia Astley was Pete Townshend's sister-in-law. She was the sister of Pete Townshend's wife, Karen, and she made this EP of rather dreamy, soft, naive vocals, somewhat childlike, and the first song on here is in fact based on one of the Kindertotenlieder by Mahler, the songs on the deaths of children. So this might be called dream pop. It's maybe a little, if you're interested in the Cocteau Twins without all the reverb, this might be interesting to you. Next, show a 7-inch record. That's hard to nail down because I have thousands of 7-inch records all boxed away, but I picked out Amandule 2. All the Years Round and The Tables Are Turned, 2 songs from the album Carnival in Babylon from 1972. Just picked out this one because A, it's pretty unusual, you don't see this around, and B, it's just got an awesome picture sleeve. Next, favorite album to fall asleep to. I live in a small apartment, so sometimes there is some disturbing noise, neighbor noise, that might interfere with sleep. So, whereas some people use a white noise generator to block out unwanted sounds, I like to listen to this Sounds of Thunder by the Sea, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just an environment's recording of waves crashing and the sound of a storm. So that's very nice to both relax to and to block out unwanted noise. And finally, favorite VC experience or advice for those contemplating making a video. I'm probably the last person in the world who should be offering anybody any advice about anything. But the favorite VC experience is just the whole entirety of it. The fact that people really do enjoy watching the videos and respond. It's called the vinyl community for a reason. It really is wonderful to feel that sense of community with all the other folks who make videos. So thank you all. Thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you again soon. Bye-bye for now.